It's rather interesting the way that Sallust portrays Cicero. He can't tell the story of the Catilinarian conspiracy without having Cicero involved quite a lot. Cicero was consul in 63 and was very much involved in exposing Catiline to the Senate. And Cicero himself lost no opportunity to tell everybody that he had saved the state. But the way Cicero is presented in the set text is rather downplayed. He has to be there. He is the person to whom the conspirator Curius, via Fulvia, his mistress, manages to sort of betray the conspiracy. So this goes sort of personally to Cicero via Fulvia. And that already is a little dodgy. Sort of Cicero is getting this information via this woman of dubious character, or that doesn't sort of speak very much for Cicero's own uprightness and his potential for being an opposite of Catiline. Also, how Cicero reacts to this, so in chapter 26, is that although Catiline lays plots insidias against Cicero, Cicero himself has astutia, so sort of wisdom perhaps, but also dolus, which is just sort of cunning, guile. It's not a very positive word. It's attributing to Cicero cleverness, but not a kind of open bravery that Cicero perhaps might have wanted to be associated with. So what is also then very interesting is that, having set up Cicero as somebody who works in a sort of slightly behindhand way, Sallust mentions that Cicero exposes Catiline's plot to the Senate, but he doesn't give Cicero a speech. And perhaps everybody would have read Cicero's speeches so much that having Sallust produce a Ciceronian speech might not have been a very good move, and sort of from a literary point of view. But he really glosses over that moment, which for Cicero had been an occasion for a great rhetorical tour de force for his first Catilinarian speech, which was published, and even more. Cicero's speech begins very famously by asking, "How long, Catiline, will you ask us to endure what you're doing?" And if you look carefully at the speech that Catiline makes in Sallust has actually put that "How long will you put up with this?" little phrase into the mouth of Catiline, which sounds very much as if he's having a bit of a dig at Cicero's oratorical skill, as well as the way that he had dealt with the conspiracy. Another very interesting moment in which Cicero is mentioned in the set text is one of these points where Sallust does what ancient historians often do, and sort of gives you one or two different versions of a story, and then perhaps doesn't really say which one he favours, but kind of hints which way you might be meant to jump, and perhaps suggests why he's expressing it in that manner. And this comes at a moment when we might not expect Cicero to be mentioned at all. It's after Catiline's speech, and Sallust adds this final detail that something that the conspirators also did, some say, was to pass around and all drink from a bowl of human blood mixed with wine. So, the idea being that this sort of bound them together in their conspiracy, and that if this was ever betrayed, that they had done this would be sort of great shame to all of them. So it made each of them less likely to betray the conspiracy. So Sallust says, well, some people say this happened. And then he says, well, others say, no, this detail was invented later. But he doesn't say, some say this detail was invented by people who wanted to paint Catiline as a particularly terrible person, rather as I am doing. It's very much the sort of thing that Sallust might include himself. He says, no, something that this detail was invented by those who thought that this would be a good idea to save Cicero's reputation. So Sallust points here to the end of the story, which is that Cicero, as consul, authorises the summary execution without trial of all of the Catilinarian conspirators. And it's for doing this that Cicero is later exiled. Romans clearly think this was a dubious thing for Cicero to have done. And so Sallust here is sort of saying, well, there's details like this were put about by people who wanted to save Cicero's reputation by really blackening the conspirators and showing what terrible people they were, who obviously didn't deserve to live and obviously did deserve to be executed. They're sort of trying to show that Cicero's action was proportionate. So already at this very, very early stage of the whole story of the conspiracy, Sallust is asking us to think, well, this ended, however bad Catiline was, with execution without trial, and that Cicero was behind that. I think he's challenging the reader. He's asking, what do you think? Do you think that Cicero did the right thing and it might be worth inventing details about bulls of blood in order to make that sound okay? Or do you, perhaps with me, I think he's hinting, think that Cicero's action may not have been the right way to finish off the political upheaval after all?